Stephen?
I'd just like to explain the process in the Queensland government. Through DPI is very passionate about a profitable and long-term beef industry because it's the biggest agriculture industry in the state, and so they're very interested in this topic and how beef industry and agriculture in general will fit within the greenhouse space and how it will keep generating money for the state. So the way the process works though is that reports we generate and presentations we do goes up through the policy ranks within DPI, and then via the DPI minister goes out to other departments such as the Office of Climate Change and through DERM, which is the old NRW, and goes through a lot of policy machinations. And I can tell you the fact that they are considering it, what their actual policy outcome may be is very unclear, but they are actually considering some of the work that is generated by myself and people like Ed on methane.
Thanks very much. Tony?
Alan.
Sorry. Alan.
Oh, thanks. I think...
I do know the faces.
I think getting back to the decision makers, this whole debate is evolving and we're getting on top of bits and pieces, and I think what came out today is we're very, very short of science in a lot of areas. All the people on this panel with me have been aware of it for a long time. And I'm just leading into the kangaroo position. At the moment, well, a lot of people call it the furry critter debate, but the main problem with the kangaroos is that they have not been linked into the carbon cycle. And until the city people decide that kangaroos are involved in the carbon cycle, just like methane is, nothing is going to happen about it. And it's interesting the other day that Gordon Grigg, who's always been promoting kangaroos, he was releasing some research work saying that the old comparison between what a kangaroo consumed and what a cow and a sheep consumed was completely wrong. And he was saying that actually the kangaroos were even eating less than we thought. But that totally misses the point completely. It's not what any animal eats, it's the amount of production they shut down. And because a kangaroo is something that's completely mobile, it is always where it's least welcome. And there's no difference between kangaroos and sheep. You've only got to look at some of the exclosures in the Adalia National Park. There's no livestock in there whatsoever, but there's completely bare dirt around the exclosures. So a plant doesn't know what ate it. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a sheep or a kangaroo. And so what I'm really saying is that when we get into this whole soil carbon debate, I wonder the impact of the kangaroos on the soil carbon balances. And then when you take it another step further, the ruminant animals that are left behind in the landscape, if a landscape's overgrazed, or we talk about the total amount of consumption, the quality of the diet will actually reduce in the landscape, and that will then be reflected back in the methane outcome. So, like Tony said, you can't look at anything in isolation. This is a systems approach that we need, and until somebody at the top realises that the kangaroos are interfering with this earth and is endangering the future generations, taking the political line now, that's how it could be solved.
Thanks, Alan. And lastly, Ed. Ed also wanted to make a comment. Mike, you prompted them all to speak, which was well done. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in terms of communicating back to people in positions of influence. I think we've been discussing with the Department of Climate Change about the emissions trading scheme and how ruminants would fit in it or not. And I've felt that over the last 3 to 6 months there's been a very clear shift in emphasis, I think, from the department anyway, that they're realising that the logistics of including methane in the CPRS are quite horrendous, and they are also hearing from your voice and groups that represent you that this is something that's not palatable in the bush. And I think a number of us have noticed in the last 3 to 6 months there's been a definite shift in emphasis away from this is not, our way or the highway sort of approach to one that's perhaps more amenable to negotiation. And I think the other thing that's remarkable is you've got the whole agricultural sector on the same page when you consider you've got sectors in agriculture that may well benefit from CPRS, whereas the ruminant sector clearly doesn't. And yet somehow or other we've managed to get all the groups, generally speaking, from the same hymn book. And I think that's beginning to resonate, so I'm quite optimistic actually.
Thank you, Ed. And for our last question to the panel, Tony Wilmot.
I'd like to say that I've really enjoyed the debate today because I felt I'm actually new chair of the GD, and I'm engaging in rangeland study through University of Queensland. So especially, Bob, it was really echoes of John Taylor, who is the Dean of Rangelands Australia. So I can't say that a lot of this was new to me. But I really enjoyed the proactive debate because it really, I chaired the meeting, the combined catchment meeting yesterday. We had long and lengthy discussions on the Dalbassi tool that's going to be used for the leasehold land renewals. And I know it's a different guise, but I think no matter, and I really enjoyed Alan, everyone today, I thought, because I've been on the record as saying that every time I go to one of these meetings, I get a whole heap of new terminology that's really difficult to reiterate and explain to anyone else. But particularly Alan, as last speaker, I think he put it in a very succinct and understandable manner today. And getting back to the Dalbassi thing, I hear people very worried and have trouble understanding when you start talking about, we call it landscape function, being rangeland students, but whether it's carbon grazing or anything, it relates back to so much that we do, and that if we can increase our carbon in the soil, it comes back to increased profitability. And I also, getting back to the Dalbassi thing, and also would like to note, we didn't bring into the local government. One way they do have influence is we've got this, the stock root review happening. Wheatonshire alone has something like 162,000 hectares. So, you know, I think they have the tool, and I know I'm a rural lands officer at the Wheatonshire Council. I think we do have the ability to influence people. We've got the Wild Rivers debate going. Again, it'll come back to carbon grazing, it'll come back to land function analysis. It's all basically the same thing, is learning how to assess our land and how we can move from one level to another, and ultimately we can be better managers of the land, whether it be for grazing production or as custodians like in local government. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask you to join with me in thanking our presenters for today. And Alan Lauder spoke to us this afternoon. Thank you very much, Alan. Tony Lovell. Thanks, Tony. Dr. Stephen Bray. Thank you, Steve. And then Emeritus Professor Bob Miles.
That emeritus means that you're just old. Eligible for pre-chewed food. Thanks, ladies.
We wouldn't have known from looking at you, Bob. And lastly, Dr. Ed Charmley from the CSIRO.